The Old Keeper walked slowly through the dark halls of the Grand Archive. His name was Veleth, and he had served the Zerathi people for over 300 years. His four hearts beat with a strange fear as he descended deeper into the ancient vault. No one had visited this section in thousands of years. The dust on the floor was thick, and the air smelled of forgotten ages. Veleth held his light crystal high as he moved past rows of sealed containers. Each one held knowledge from the time before the Galactic Concord existed. The Concord had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, keeping peace among 1,200 different species. Veleth had always believed they were safe. He had always believed the old warnings were just stories told to frighten children. But 3 months ago, everything changed. A Zerathi observation probe had been found near the outer planets of a small yellow star. The probe had been watching a blue world for decades, recording the activities of a young species that called themselves humans. When the humans discovered the probe, they did not destroy it. They did not run from it. Instead, they studied it with curious eyes and sent messages of greeting into the void. The Concord had known about humans for a long time. They were considered primitive, barely capable of traveling beyond their own moon. They were not supposed to be a threat for at least another 1,000 years. But somehow, impossibly, they had developed faster than anyone predicted. They were reaching toward the stars much sooner than they should. And that was when Veleth remembered the prophecy. He found the crystal tablets exactly where the old record said they would be. They were made of a material older than the Zerathi civilization itself. The Forerunners had left them behind when they vanished from the galaxy millions of years ago. No one knew what happened to the Forerunners. They simply disappeared, leaving only warnings for those who came after. Veleth's hands trembled as he translated the ancient symbols. His translator device struggled with the old language, but slowly the words became clear. What he read made his blood turn cold. From the third world of an unremarkable yellow star, they will rise. Creatures of impossible contradiction. Weak yet unyielding. Short-lived yet eternal in their ambition. They will not conquer through strength alone, but through a madness the cosmos has never witnessed. They adapt. They persist. They do not know when they are beaten. They are the menace. They are the change. They are humanity. Veleth sat in the darkness for a long time after reading those words. The prophecy described the humans perfectly. Third world from a yellow star. That was Earth. The Forerunners had known about them millions of years before humans even existed. They had seen the future, and they had been afraid. Far across the galaxy, aboard the human exploration vessel called the Starboard Pioneer, Captain Daniel Burke stared out the window at the endless stars. He was a tall man with gray at his temples and tired eyes that had seen too much. Behind him, Commander Lisa Simmons reviewed the latest transmission from Earth. "The United Nations has approved the diplomatic mission," she said. "We're to proceed to the Concordia system and establish formal relations with the Galactic Concord." Burke nodded slowly. 3 months ago, they had made first contact with alien life. The discovery had changed everything on Earth. Old conflicts suddenly seemed small and pointless. Humanity had finally learned they were not alone in the universe. But Burke felt uneasy. Something about the alien communications did not feel right. They were too careful, too formal. It reminded him of how people spoke when they were hiding something. "The Concord has invited us to their capital world," he said quietly. "They want to welcome us into their community of species." Simmons moved to stand beside him. She was younger than Burke, with sharp eyes and a quick mind. She had noticed the same strange patterns in the alien messages. "Permission to speak freely, Captain?" "Always." "Something feels wrong about this invitation." "They discovered us watching their probe. They know we've been studying their technology. And yet they welcome us with open arms. It doesn't make sense." Burke agreed, but he kept his thoughts to himself. Earth needed this alliance. Humanity was still young and weak compared to species that had traveled to stars for millions of years. They could not afford to make enemies. "We follow orders," he said finally, "but we stay alert." On the Concorde's capital station, the 12 high speakers gathered in their ancient chamber. These were the leaders of the most powerful species in the galaxy. They had maintained peace for 10,000 years through careful diplomacy and overwhelming force. Nothing threatened their control. Until now. High Speaker Kethra of the Marvani Collective displayed the translated prophecy for all to see. Her crystalline body reflected the light in fractured rainbows as she spoke. The archivist Veloth has confirmed the translation. The Forerunner prophecy speaks of humans. They are the menace that was foretold. Ambassador Yorith of the Kethrani Empire clicked his mandibles in anger. His species resembled giant insects, and they had little patience for threats. "We must destroy them now, before they spread." The Forerunners warned us for a reason. We cannot ignore their wisdom. "They are primitive," argued another speaker, a being of pure energy named Chorus of Stars. "They have only just learned to travel between worlds." Perhaps the prophecy speaks of a distant future, not the present. "The prophecy says they adapt," Kethra replied coldly. "It says they grow faster than they should. Look at their history. 300,000 years ago, they were animals hunting with rocks. Now they stand at the edge of interstellar travel. No other species has advanced so quickly. The Forerunners were right to fear them." The chamber fell silent as the high speakers considered her words. Veloth watched from the shadows, his heart heavy with guilt. He'd brought this knowledge to them hoping they would understand. Instead, he had given them a reason to commit genocide. "We will invite them to Concordia," Kethra decided. "We will study them closely, and then we will vote on their fate. Integration or extinction. There can be no middle ground." The vote was set for 30 days from now. In that time, humanity would either prove themselves worthy of the stars, or they would be erased from existence. The Galactic Concorde had destroyed species before. They could do it again. Far away, aboard the stalwart Pioneer, Captain Burke looked at the stars and felt a chill run down his spine. He did not know about the prophecy. He did not know about the vote. But somewhere deep inside, he sensed that humanity was walking into a trap. Their greatest test was about to begin. Ambassador Holloway returned to the human quarters before dawn. She found Marsh and Price waiting for her, their faces tight with worry. She placed the data crystal on the table and activated it. The prophecy of the Forerunners filled the room, with glowing symbols that the translator slowly converted to human language. They read it in silence. When it was finished, no one spoke for a long time. "They want to kill us," Price said finally. His voice was flat, controlled, but his hands had formed into fists. "All of us. Every human being on Earth, every colony, every ship. Because of words written millions of years ago." Marsh was still staring at the prophecy, his scientific mind trying to process what he had read. "The Foreigners knew about us before we existed. That's impossible. Unless they had some way to see the future." "Does it matter how they knew?" Price demanded. "The Concorde believes it. That's all that matters." Holloway held up her hand for silence. "We have 23 days before the vote. That means we have 23 days to change their minds." "How?" Marsh asked. "They've already decided we're monsters. They've been preparing for this moment for thousands of years. Then we show them they're wrong." Holloway's voice was steady, but her mind was racing. "The prophecy calls us a menace. It says we adapt, we persist, we never give up. It says we're dangerous." She paused, looking at her team. "What if we prove that those same qualities can be strengths instead of threats?" The next morning, Holloway requested a formal meeting with the Concorde Council. Cathra agreed, but her crystalline face betrayed no emotion. The High Speaker had expected the humans to remain ignorant of their fate until the final vote. She was curious how they had learned the truth. The council chamber was vast. Thousands of delegates from hundreds of species filled the rising seats that surrounded a central platform. The humans stood alone in the middle, surrounded by beings who had already decided they were enemies. Holloway stepped forward and spoke clearly. High Speakers, delegates of the Galactic Concord, we know about the prophecy. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Cathra's crystalline form flickered with surprise. We know that you believe we are the menace foretold by the Forerunners, Holloway continued. We know that you are voting on whether to destroy our entire species. And we know that you are afraid of us. Ambassador Yorth clicked his mandibles angrily. You dare speak to us of fear? Your species is an infant. You have no right to address this council. We have every right, Holloway replied calmly. You are deciding our fate. We deserve to be heard. Cathra raised a hand for silence. Very well, Ambassador. Speak your piece. Tell us why we should not do what the Foreigners warned us to do. Holloway took a deep breath. This was the moment that would determine everything. The wrong words could doom her entire species. The right words might give them a chance. The prophecy says we adapt faster than any other species, she began. That is true. 300,000 years ago, we were animals living in caves. We had no fire, no tools, no language. The universe gave us nothing special. We are not stronger than most species here. We are not faster. We have no natural armor, no venomous stingers, no ability to survive in vacuum. By every measure, we should not have survived. She paused, looking around the chamber at the thousands of alien faces watching her. But we did survive. When ice ages came and covered our world, we learned to make fire and clothing. When predators hunted us, we learned to hunt them instead. When diseases killed millions of us, we studied them and created cures. Every time the universe tried to destroy us, we found a way to keep going. Yorth interrupted again. This proves our point. You are relentless. You consume and expand without end. You will not stop until you have taken everything. No, Holloway said firmly. We will not stop until we have made things better. That is the part of the prophecy you do not understand. She activated her translator's display function, filling the chamber with images from human history. But she did not show wars or conquests. Instead, she showed something else entirely. She showed the Great Pyramids of Egypt, built by human hands working together over decades. She showed the cathedrals of Europe, monuments of stone and light created by communities who would never live to see them finished. She showed the moon landing, human beings standing on another world for the first time. She showed doctors fighting, diseases in poor villages, teachers educating children in war zones, strangers risking their lives to save others from floods and earthquakes. The prophecy calls us dangerous, Holloway said, and we are. But we are not dangerous because we destroy. We are dangerous because we create. We are dangerous because we hope. We look at impossible problems and we refuse to accept that they cannot be solved. The chamber was silent now. Even Yorth had stopped clicking his mandibles. You have maintained peace in this galaxy for 10,000 years, Holloway continued. That is a remarkable achievement, but your peace is built on fear. You fear change. You fear anything that might disrupt your careful balance. That is why the prophecy frightens you. Not because we might destroy you, but because we might change you. Cathra leaned forward. And if that change is destruction? If the foreigners were right? Then you will have lost nothing by giving us a chance, Holloway replied. You are 1,200 species strong. We are one young civilization barely reaching beyond our own star. If we prove to be the menace you fear, you will have plenty of time to stop us. But if you destroy us now, out of fear of what we might become, you will never know what we could have given you." She stepped back, her message delivered. "We are not asking you to trust us. We are asking you to let us prove ourselves. Let us show you what humanity can do. Let us show you that the prophecy was not a warning of destruction, but a promise of something better." The chamber exploded into noise as thousands of delegates began arguing among themselves. Kethra watched the humans standing calm and steady in the middle of the chaos. For the first time, she began to wonder if the prophecy had been misunderstood all along. Ambassador Holloway had bought humanity time, but the vote was still coming, and time was running out. The human delegation arrived at Concordia Station 6 weeks after leaving Earth. Their ship, the stalwart Pioneer, looked small and simple compared to the massive alien vessels that filled the docking bays. Captain Burke watched through the window as they approached, his jaw tight with tension. Concor DI station was enormous. It stretched across space like a city made of light and metal. Millions of beings from hundreds of different species lived and worked there. It was the heart of the Galactic Concord, the place where decisions that shaped the entire galaxy were made. Ambassador Grace Holloway stood beside Burke as they prepared to disembark. She was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and calm eyes. Earth had chosen her to represent all of humanity because she never lost her composure, not even in impossible situations. "Remember," she told her team, "we are guests here. We smile, we listen, and we learn everything we can." Dr. Kevin Marsh nodded eagerly. He was the team's expert in alien languages and cultures. He had spent his entire life dreaming of this moment. Meeting actual aliens was everything he had ever wanted. Lieutenant Nathan Price was less excited. He was responsible for security, and his instincts told him something was very wrong. He had noticed the way the alien communications changed over the past weeks. They had become colder, more formal. It felt like the Concorde was preparing for something, and Price did not think it was a welcome party. The delegation walked through the airlock and into the station. What they found surprised them. The corridor was empty. Holloway had expected crowds, or at least a formal greeting committee. Instead, there was only silence. Their footsteps echoed against the metal floor as they walked forward. "Where is everyone?" Marsh whispered. Price's hand moved toward his weapon. "Stay alert." They turned a corner and finally found the aliens waiting for them. But the scene was not what they expected. Hundreds of different species lined both sides of the corridor, watching them in complete silence. No one spoke. No one moved. They simply stared at the humans with expressions that were difficult to read. Marsh had studied alien body language for years. He recognized fear when he saw it. These beings were terrified. "Ambassador," he whispered, "they're afraid of us." Holloway kept walking, her expression pleasant and calm. "That doesn't make sense. We're the primitive ones here. Maybe that's not how they see it." The welcoming committee finally appeared at the end of the corridor. High Speaker Kethra stood at the front, her crystalline body glowing softly in the station's lights. Behind her stood representatives from a dozen different species, all keeping a careful distance from the humans. "Welcome to Concordia Station," Kethra said through a translator device. Her voice was melodic but cold. "Humanity has traveled far to reach us." Holloway bowed her head respectfully. "We are honored to be here, High Speaker. Earth sends its warmest greetings to the Galactic Concord." Kethra studied the humans for a long moment. They were smaller than she expected, softer. They had no natural armor, no claws, no obvious weapons built into their bodies. And yet the prophecy said they were the most dangerous species in the galaxy. "You must be tired from your journey," she said finally. "We have prepared quarters for your delegation. Rest tonight. Tomorrow, we will begin our discussions." The humans were led to a section of the station that had been emptied of all other residents. Their quarters were comfortable but isolated. Price immediately began searching for surveillance devices. He found 17 hidden cameras within the first hour. "They're watching everything we do," he reported to Holloway. "Every word we say is being recorded." "That's expected," she replied. "We're strangers here. They want to understand us." "No, Ambassador. This is different." Price pulled up a display showing the station's layout. "Look at the security around our section. There are armed guards on every level. Heavy weapons emplacements covering all exits. This isn't observation. This is containment." Marsh had been reviewing his recordings of the aliens they had passed. "The fear in their body language is genuine. I've cataloged 47 distinct species, and all of them showed the same response. They weren't curious about us. They were terrified." Holloway sat down slowly, her mind working through the implications. Why would the most powerful civilization in the galaxy be afraid of us? We barely made it here. Our technology is centuries behind theirs. The answer came that night. A message arrived through a hidden channel that bypassed the Concorde's surveillance systems. It contained coordinates to a maintenance corridor deep in the station's lower levels, along with a single sentence: "Come alone if you want to understand." Price immediately objected. "It's obviously a trap." "Maybe," Holloway agreed. "Or maybe someone wants to help us." She went anyway, slipping out of their quarters while Price created a distraction. The corridors were empty at this hour, and she moved quickly through the shadows until she reached the meeting point. Veleth was waiting for her. The old Zirathi archivist looked exhausted. His 4 eyes were dim with worry, and his movements were slow. He had risked everything to arrange this meeting. "You are Ambassador Holloway," he said quietly. "I am Veleth. I am the one who discovered the truth about your species." "What truth?" Veleth handed her a data crystal. "The Galactic Concorde is not here to welcome you. They are here to judge you. In 23 days, they will vote on whether humanity should be allowed to exist." Holloway felt her blood run cold. "I don't understand." "There is a prophecy," Veleth explained. "It was written by the foreigners millions of years ago, before they vanished from the galaxy. It speaks of a species from the third world of a yellow star. A species that adapts faster than any other. A species that refuses to accept defeat. A species that will change everything." He looked at her with ancient, tired eyes. "The prophecy calls you the menace, Ambassador. The Concorde believes you will destroy us all. And they are considering destroying you first." Holloway stared at the data crystal in her hand. It contained a prophecy that could mean the end of her entire species. She had come to the stars seeking friendship and alliance. Instead, she had found a death sentence waiting in the dark. "What can we do?" she asked. Veleth shook his head slowly. "I do not know. But I believe the foreigners were wrong. I have studied your history, your art, your music. You are not monsters. You are something else entirely." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "You are hope, Ambassador. Dangerous hope. And the galaxy does not know what to do with hope anymore." He turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Holloway alone with the weight of humanity's future in her hands. The days that followed Holloway's speech were strange and tense. The Concorde Council delayed the vote to allow time for investigation. Delegations from different species began requesting meetings with the humans. Curious to learn more about these small creatures who spoke so boldly. Back on Earth, Admiral Patricia Dunn received the emergency transmission with growing alarm. She had commanded human forces for 30 years, and she had never faced a threat like this. The Galactic Concorde controlled technology that made Earth's most powerful weapons look like toys. If they decided to destroy humanity, there would be nothing anyone could do to stop them. We need options, she told the emergency council. Fighting is not one of them. But we cannot simply wait and hope for the best. The council debated for hours. Some wanted to flee, to scatter human colonies across the galaxy so that the Concord could never find them all. Others wanted to surrender completely, to prove they were not a threat by giving up all their weapons and technology. Nothing seemed good enough. Finally, a young officer named Sophie Grant spoke up. She was not important enough to be at this meeting normally, but the crisis had brought everyone together. What if we show them something they cannot do? She asked. The prophecy says we adapt faster than anyone else. What if we prove it? The council turned to look at her. Admiral Dunn raised an eyebrow. Explain. The Concord has been traveling the stars for millions of years, Sophie said. In all that time, they have developed certain technologies and certain ways of doing things. They have stopped innovating because they believe they have already solved every problem. But humans never stop innovating. We see problems differently. What if we solve a problem they could not solve? It was a desperate plan, but it was also their only chance. Meanwhile, on Concordia Station, the human delegation was learning everything they could about the Concord and its many species. Dr. Marsh spent his days in the station's great library, studying the histories and cultures of civilizations that had existed for millions of years. What he discovered surprised him. The Concord was stagnant. The technology they use now was almost identical to the technology they had used 10,000 years ago. The art they created followed patterns established millions of years in the past. Their societies were stable, peaceful, and completely unchanged. They had achieved perfection, and perfection had made them stop growing. They're afraid of us because we're still changing, Marsh told Holloway during one of their evening meetings. They look at our history and they see chaos. War, revolution, constant transformation. To them, that looks like madness. But it's also the reason we've advanced so quickly. Lieutenant Price had been gathering intelligence of a different kind. He had mapped the station's security systems, identified the Concord's military capabilities, and assessed their weaknesses. What he found was not encouraging. Their weapons can destroy planets, he reported grimly. They have ships that can travel across the galaxy in hours. If they decide to attack Earth, we will be dead before we even know they are coming. Then we make sure they do not decide to attack, Holloway replied. The stalwart pioneer remained in orbit around Concordia Station, waiting for orders. Captain Burke had received the encrypted message from Admiral Dunn explaining the plan. He had also received the mathematical equations that Sophie Grant had developed during a sleepless, 3-day sprint. No one believed they would work. The math was too new, too untested. But Sophie had solved a navigation problem that the Concord said was impossible. She had found a way to calculate hyperspace coordinates with perfect precision, something that the Concord's best scientists had failed to achieve in millions of years of trying. If this works, Commander Simmons said, we'll prove the prophecy right. We'll prove that humans can do things no one else can do. And if it fails? Burke asked. Then we'll prove them right a different way, by dying spectacularly. Burke smiled grimly. Humanity has always been good at that. On the day before the vote, Ambassador Holloway requested a final audience with the full council. The chamber was packed with delegates from every corner of the galaxy. This would be her last chance to speak before they decided humanity's fate. High speakers, she began. Delegates of the Galactic Concord. Tomorrow you will vote on whether my species should live or die. Before you make that decision, I ask you to witness something. She nodded to Lieutenant Price, who sent a signal to the stalwart pioneer in orbit above the station. Captain Burke took a deep breath. Execute the jump. The stalwart pioneer's engines hummed with power. Sophie Grant's equations fed through the navigation computer, calculating coordinates that should have been impossible to calculate. The ship bent space around itself and vanished from normal reality. In the council chamber, alarms began screaming. Delegates jumped from their seats in panic. Kethra's crystalline form flared with emergency signals. And then, impossibly, the stalwart pioneer dropped out of hyperspace directly in front of the council chamber's main window. It was impossible. No ship had ever achieved such precise navigation. The Concorde's best scientists said it could not be done. The mathematics were too complex, the variables too unpredictable. And yet, there was the human ship, hanging in space exactly where it wanted to be. The chamber fell into shocked silence. That ship just performed a precision jump that your scientists said was impossible, Holloway said calmly. It was done using equations developed by a young human engineer who refused to believe it could not be done. She worked for 3 days without sleep because she wanted to prove something. Holloway looked around the chamber at the stunned faces of the delegates. The prophecy calls us a menace. And perhaps we are. We refuse to accept limits. We see the impossible and we try anyway. We fail and we try again. We are relentless because we believe tomorrow can always be better than today. She stepped forward, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. You can destroy us. You have the power to wipe out every human being in the galaxy. But if you do, you will lose something precious. You will lose a species that looks at the universe and sees not what it is, but what it could be. You will lose the most dangerous thing in existence. She paused. You will lose hope. The council sat in stunned silence as Holloway finished speaking. Tomorrow they would vote. And for the first time, no one was certain how that vote would go. The night before the vote was the longest of Ambassador Holloway's life. She sat alone in her quarters, watching the stars through the window, wondering if those same stars would still shine on human worlds after tomorrow. The weight of 8 billion lives rested on her shoulders, and she had done everything she could. Now all she could do was wait. On the Starboard Pioneer, Captain Burke had received orders to remain in position near the station. If the vote went badly, the ship was to flee immediately and warn Earth. They would have perhaps a few weeks before the Concorde's fleets arrived. Not enough time to prepare a defense. Only enough time to say goodbye. Commander Simmons found Burke standing on the observation deck, staring at Concordia Station's glittering lights. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Do you think we have a chance? She finally asked. Burke considered the question carefully. I think we showed them something they did not expect. Whether that was enough, I cannot say. In the Grand Archive, Vela spent the night reviewing everything he had gathered about humanity. He had watched their movies, read their books, listened to their music. He had studied their wars and their peace treaties, their greatest achievements and their darkest failures. What he found was a species of endless contradiction. Humans could be cruel. Their history was filled with violence, oppression, and destruction. They had killed each other over differences in skin color, in religion, in politics. They had burned their own world with pollution and nearly destroyed themselves with weapons they should never have built, but they could also be kind. Veleth had watched recordings of humans running into burning buildings to save strangers. He had seen them donate blood and organs to people they would never meet. He had read stories of soldiers carrying wounded enemies to safety, of communities rebuilding after disasters, of individuals sacrificing everything for causes greater than themselves. The prophecy called them a menace. Veleth was beginning to think the Forerunners had misunderstood. Or perhaps the Forerunners had understood perfectly, and the word menace meant something different than the Concorde believed. Morning came to Concordia Station. The council chamber filled with delegates from every species in the Galactic Concorde. Kethra took her place at the center of the high speaker's platform, her crystalline body glowing with nervous energy. Today would determine the course of galactic history, Ambassador Holloway stood in the center of the chamber with her small team. Marsh was beside her, his face pale but determined. Price stood at attention, ready for anything. Behind them, watching through the window, the stalwart pioneer waited in silent vigil. "The vote will now proceed," Kethra announced. "The question before us is simple. Will the Galactic Concord accept humanity as a member species? Or will we act on the Forerunner prophecy and ensure they never become the menace that was foretold?" Ambassador Yorith rose first. His mandibles clicked with conviction as he spoke. "I vote for extinction. The prophecy is clear. The humans are dangerous. We cannot risk everything we have built on the hope that they will change." Murmurs of agreement rippled through parts of the chamber. Holloway kept her face calm, but her heart sank. Chorus -- stars. The energy being who had shown doubt at earlier meetings spoke next. "I vote for integration. The humans have shown us something remarkable. They solved a problem we could not solve. They look at the impossible and see opportunity. That is not a menace. That is a gift." The votes continued, one by one. Some species voted for extinction, citing the prophecy and the long history of human violence. Others voted for integration, moved by Holloway's words and the impossible precision jump. The count seesawed back and forth as hours passed. Velith watched from his place in the shadows, his four hearts pounding. He had never seen a vote so close. The galaxy was truly divided on the question of humanity. Finally, only Kethra's vote remained. The count stood at 596 for integration, 596 for extinction, with 6 abstentions. The fate of humanity rested on a single voice. The high speaker of the Morvani collective rose slowly. Every eye in the chamber turned toward her. She looked at the humans standing alone in the center of the room, small and fragile and utterly unbroken. "I have studied the prophecy my entire life," Kethra said quietly. "I believed I understood what the foreigners were warning us about. I believed humans were the enemy we needed to destroy before they destroyed us." She paused, and the silence stretched across the chamber like a held breath. "But I was wrong." Gasps echoed through the hall. Yorith's mandibles clicked in shock. "The foreigners did not warn us to destroy humanity," Kethra continued. "They warned us that humanity would change everything. And they were right. In just a few weeks, these small creatures have forced us to question beliefs we have held for 10,000 years. They have shown us technology we said was impossible. They have reminded us that growth comes from challenge, not from safety." She turned to face Holloway directly. "The prophecy calls you a menace. But the Forerunner word for menace is the same as their word for catalyst. Perhaps they were not predicting our destruction. Perhaps they were predicting our transformation." Kethra raised her hand. "I vote for integration." The chamber erupted into chaos. Some delegates cheered. Others shouted in anger. Yorith stormed out of the hall, his followers close behind. But the vote was final. Humanity had been accepted into the Galactic Concord by a margin of one single voice. Holloway felt tears rolling down her cheeks. Beside her, Marsh was laughing with relief. Even Price allowed himself a small smile. On the stalwart pioneer, Captain Burke received the news and closed his eyes in gratitude. Commander Simmons put a hand on his shoulder. "We did it," she whispered. "We survived." "No," Burke replied softly. "We did more than survive. We changed everything." The celebrations on Earth lasted for weeks. Humanity had faced extinction and emerged stronger. They had proven that the prophecy was not a curse, but a promise. They were different from the other species of the galaxy, and that difference was their greatest strength. In his archive, Velith added a new entry to the ancient records. He wrote of the humans and their impossible achievements. He wrote of their courage, their stubbornness, their refusal to accept defeat. and he wrote his own interpretation of the Forerunner prophecy. "The menace has arrived," he wrote, "and the galaxy will never be the same. Not because humans will destroy us, but because they will show us what we have forgotten. They will remind us that change is not something to fear. They will teach us to hope again." He looked out his window at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them, humans were looking back. "They are exactly what we needed," Velas wrote. "They just do not know it yet." Far away, aboard the starward Pioneer, Sophie Grant was already working on her next impossible problem. The galaxy was full of challenges that everyone said could not be solved. She intended to solve them all, because that was what humans did. They looked at the impossible and saw opportunity. They faced extinction and found hope. They were small, fragile, short-lived creatures in a universe of ancient giants, and they were just getting started.